Mogadishu.
This was an MTV war.
20 to 8. 9. This is going nowhere.
You will not be able to stay home, brother.
My name is Sam Kiley. I'm the Africa correspondent for The Times.
You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out.
I'm Scott Peterson.
You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because...
I write for the Daily Telegraph.
Massimo Alberizi, Corriere della Sera, giornalista.
Will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions.
At least 10 dead and more than 100.
Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew.
Reuters, Aidan Hartley, East Africa correspondent.
The revolution will not be televised.
20 minutes before 9 o'clock, gunfire started. This is going to be more difficult than I thought.
The reason that we're covering this story is the story's here, and the reason we're in the Sahafi is it's the only hotel in town.
Well, on a quiet day in Mogadishu, one day I heard that the Americans were coming, so I walked down to a hotel just down the road there, and I tried to book some rooms for our company that was coming in. And there were about 8 people coming in, so I walked in, sat down, had a cup of tea, and chatted with the guy and said, I'd like to have 8 rooms, please. And he said, okay, fine, $50 a room. I went down a couple of days later, and I said, I'd like to have those 8 rooms, please. And he said, sorry, the hotel's been bought by CBS. I said, bought? We didn't have anywhere to stay. And about 200 journalists were piling into the city. So I came down and I met this guy called Mohammed Jirda, and I said, look, we really need a place to stay.
Without much knowledge of hotels and without much idea about the needs of the media, in power, in water, in services, they tempted me in a soft way to open it the same evening and literally start building it on top of them.
And we came down here and this building was completely abandoned through the 2 years of civil war. There wasn't any beds, no plates in the restaurant, no sheets, no air conditioning, nothing. So for the first couple of days we ate standing with paper plates in the restaurant, and suddenly, before our very eyes, a hotel formed, lights, cupboards, everything, into this shell of a building.
An Englishman who was a cameraman for NBC got up. I said, what do you call the hotel? I said, I'm sorry, it has no name because it never functioned. The original builder, the owner never used it. And then he started writing a blackboard, Sahafi Hotel. How about if we call it Sahafi? And I said, excellent.
Sahafi means journalist, and so I guess that Mohammed just decided to call it the Journalist Hotel, just so that everyone would know who they were shooting at.
Journalists are not normal people like other people, and it's not a normal profession. But I don't feel bad about it. Protecting it, it's part of my job. Still, I have to be fair enough to control everything. At least to know which is the car you are using and what sort of characters they are. And basically, all the kids and all the people who work around the hotel are fair and decent.
For the next 2 years, Mohammed ran this place through the worst of times. Bullets coming through the windows, grenades slapped into the walls, and he kept it running, he kept it safe for us all, and this has to be one of the greatest hotels on earth.
It's a mystery to me.
I don't think they're crazy. I think they're people who do a lot of work in a very difficult situations. They come in the mornings and they have never been in Somalia before, or for that matter in Africa, and they have to send stories the same night or the next day.
I'm as much a mercenary as any other journalist who comes in here. I mean, of course, we want to we want to show what's happening, and we go to a place where the worst things are happening, because these are the things that are going to shock people most. These are the things that we may or may not feel need to be changed. I mean, we're not necessarily advocating that we change everything, or that the UN changes everything, or that Americans change everything, but simply that something should be done.
Devo dire che c'è stata molta solidarietà tra i giornalisti in Somalia. Ci scambiavamo le informazioni sulle interviste da fare, si diceva: ho l'intervista con questo leader, vieni con me al collega inglese, francese, tedesco. Ci scambiavamo anche le opinioni per capire come sarebbe andata a finire questa guerra. I colleghi delle televisioni ci facevano visionare i film per riuscire a vedere e capire chi c'era magari nei filmati che loro non conoscevano, e quindi per riuscire ad approfondire di più la storia.
I made incredible friendships here. People that I met in the Sahafi Hotel will be friends that I will remember for the rest of my life. People who I've been through shootings, near-death experiences.
Organizzavamo su questo terrazzo i turni di guardia di notte, perché non si riusciva a dormire, passavano gli elicotteri da tutte le parti, quindi notti insonni. Noi correvamo sul tetto, appena c'era lo slombo dell'elicottero tutti sul tetto a vedere cosa succedeva. Allora abbiamo organizzato dei turni di guardia, Ilaria, c'era il Washington Post, il Corriere della Sera, l'AP, la Reuters, tutti quanti i turni di guardia per coprire tutte le notti, in modo tale che se succedeva qualcosa di veramente grosso noi svegliavamo gli altri.
I spent a great deal of time here, and it was the most tragic of times as well as the most happy of times.
You know, this hotel is absolutely alive with people doing everything from, you know, having parties and everything else, and just basically shaking off the cares of the day, cares that for us were always manifest in having to wear our flak jackets constantly, you know, to just the heat outside, to everything from the physical discomfort to the discomfort over things that we had to see. People would sit on the rooftop having beer, and there'd be the occasional bullet singing overhead or something else, which was just absolutely normal. And you know, without that sort of thing, without the odd round going off, or a series of rounds, or a relatively constant cacophony of bullets, you know, there wasn't, you know, it wasn't Somalia really.
This is a place where you can come and for a short, beautiful time, you can live in a country where there are no rules. I think that, you know, sometimes you look on the dark side of your character while doing a story like this. And, you know, our flak jackets were our nappies. And Somalia was what we had instead of childhoods.
You know, there have been some very, very serious low points. I mean, one of the ones for me, and it must have been the lowest that I've ever been in Mogadishu, was the day on the 12th of July in 1993, when the Americans attacked a house not far from the hotel here. And we literally were there within minutes. There were 70 Somalis killed by 2,020 rounds from American helicopters, cannon rounds, 20mm, that just blasted into this house in 17 minutes. And the carnage, I mean, what was smeared across the walls in this place, really just enraged the Somalis to the point where they attacked me. I just got away, and they killed four of my colleagues.
Io e Ilaria Alpi eravamo molto amici e lavoravamo spessissimo assieme, ci scambiavamo le notizie, anzi devo dire che eravamo gli unici due corrispondenti da Mogadiscio ad abitare in questo albergo assieme a tutta la stampa straniera. Ilaria era alla stanza 314 e io ero alla stanza 315. Aver perso questa che per me era una sorella mi ha ancora di più incitato a continuare a venire in Somalia a seguire questa vicenda.
Every story is unique. What's significant about Somalia in terms of the press corps that have been covering it is that we're all essentially a Nairobi base. We're all of a similar age, similar stages in our career, which is essentially in a first or second foreign posting, and we have been on what has been an immense story up until now, and will also vanish off the TV screens and out of the newspapers from next month, probably for the next decade.
You have to look at our generation. We were a young generation of people who grew up after Vietnam, and we'd never seen American troops in action. And the Americans brought a lot of the same kind of weaponry, the same kind of language, the same kind of paranoia about a people that they didn't understand, people in flip-flops with AK-47s who were fighting a high-tech army and overwhelming force and overcoming them. And a lot of us were raised on Apocalypse Now and dispatches and other accounts of the Vietnam War. A lot of our generation cut their teeth and got their experience in Bosnia, but that was a lot different from this experience where suddenly you had thousands of Americans arriving, and we could travel in helicopters and talk to American officers who clearly didn't know what on earth was going on and didn't know anything about the people that they were fighting or the people that they were supposed to be helping. And the whole thing seemed to be another take on a situation that had existed in Southeast Asia in the 1960s.
I was there on the beach, you know, along with hundreds of other journalists on the night that the Americans landed in Mogadishu, and really, I mean, it was a bit embarrassing. You know, we were all there. The military played dumb, you know, even though they were fully aware of how many journalists were in Mogadishu. I mean, you know, everybody knew that we were all there, that we were going to be on the beach, and the military, you know, gave us briefings. They told us where to be, you know, and then they still played like, you know, almost as though we'd ambushed them, which was crazy.
It became absurd when an organization of up to 30,000 men were all hiding behind sandbags and barbed wire because a bunch of 120-pound teenagers in dresses had frightened them off the streets. And that certainly makes very compelling copy and TV.
The military officers that we met had served in Vietnam and used the same language and also had the same arrogance about the people that they were fighting. One of the officers that I met who was evacuating the last US troops last March had been in that last helicopter lifting off the US embassy in Saigon in 1975. When the Americans arrived in December 1992 and they retook the US embassy in downtown Mogadishu, they put up a flag that was the same flag that they had taken down from the US embassy in Beirut after the bombing attack against the US Marines there in 1983. So we were involved in a resurgence of American pride, and when that flag went up, an American officer said to me, "Isn't it great that sometimes the ceremony is reversed, and here we are putting the flag back up?" And then 16 months later, I met that American officer who was the same man who had lifted off in a helicopter evacuating Saigon, and they'd failed again.
The Gulf War was perhaps the most shameful display, with a few, and a very few, very notable exceptions. The international media, certainly the English language media, were a disgrace to the profession during the Gulf War. They cooperated wholeheartedly with pool system, and they turned what was a massive war into a video game. And what went on here was a kind of reassertion of what being a war correspondent is about, which is being on the streets, finding out what is actually happening. Here in Mogadishu, during the clashes between the American and UN forces and General ID's people, we were the only people who could travel between both sides. Here, when we go out on the streets and we see a Cobra helicopter gunship machine gunning women and children, we can rush back to the hotel, grab a computer and file, and know exactly how, when, what, where and why.
I feel sad that you will go, the new face is opening. I feel happy in a sense that at the end of the day, it's our job, it's our business to take care of our house. I mean, you can only do certain amount as a foreign.
Perhaps they need to be left alone. I think that the Somalis were sending quite a strong message to the world that they didn't want to be told what to do. Although the cost is very great for them, and they don't have schools, hospitals, they don't have money to run their basic social services. In Somalia, the United Nations became a third faction. It tried to come as an impartial peacekeeping force, but in fact what happened is it became embroiled in the fighting as another combatant.
Americans in the military, and indeed all Americans, can be very proud that their country led the invasion of Somalia to save Somalia from itself. And at the end of the day, the failure of the UN-US mission here cannot be laid purely at the door of the United Nations and the United States. 99% of the reason their mission failed here is because Somalis wanted it to fail.
And the question to ask is, when the Somalis finally get it together to establish a government and stop fighting, will the world come back and help them with the resources that they need to exist as a country again?
I think also most of you will be back sooner or later, not in a war zone probably, but in a better zone as visitors. You will come as tourists, you will come as media, as journalists visiting the new Somalia. Maybe it's not this year, but possibly next year.
The best years of one's life are supposed to be one's late 20s, and I've spent the most vivid experiences of that period of my life have been spent here. Whether they've actually caused me to grow as a human being or become easier to live with, or better company, or more enlightened, I think are highly debatable points. But I've nevertheless been here, and I'll leave a big chunk of myself here, and I'd rather I hadn't, but I will.
And so going back to the real world is sometimes extremely difficult, because people are going through daily normal lives that you cannot relate to. And the number of reporters that I've known who have gone through a story like this and have tried desperately to get back into a normal way of life and have found it very difficult. It's very common.
Yeah, it's ruined my life.
How so?
Because if you spend very long, sustained periods of time in extreme environments, which generally covering Africa, that's what we do. You spend 10 months of the year on the road, and you come back from somewhere like this where you've been spent 3, 5, 6 weeks running up and down the streets and in a kind of very high adrenaline environment in which all you have to think about is doing your stories and getting it right. You don't, and that is 100% absorbing. You then get home, and if you're trying to share a life with somebody, you don't want to talk about what you've been doing. You want to actually forget about it. You need to sleep, and you're rather bad company. And after a while, they get fed up and clear off.
You leave, and this is the last time, you say. And soon enough, you're hungry to come back. You just want to have a look around. Not that anything particular is happening, but really, you want to come back.
It is a drug. It's an addictive experience that forces you to go further and further in search of something that you believe will be a truth that you can then carry back to the real world, but which isn't a truth. It's just another insanity.
There's a desire in all journalists. One of the personal motivations is to kind of look into the belly of the beast, to get as close to the extremes of human experience as one possibly can get. And that's the sort of voyeuristic dimension. I have now, in this country and in Rwanda in particular, seen and met people of all the extremes, people who've been the extremes of hatred, extremes of pain, extremes of passion, extremes of love, and I've learned absolutely nothing about the human condition as a result of it.
The party's over.
And that's it.
We've had an intense time. We've had a great time. Sometimes we've had a terrible time. But it's all over. And the friendships that we made here will be scattered across the world. Maybe we'll meet in Grozny, Sarajevo, somewhere else. But the intense evenings, the intense conversations, the confessions, all of that will be a thing of the past.
Of course, for the next few months it will be very low. I'll just cut this stuff and go low. But wait. I'm sure with your publicity, positive and some not all positive, I'm fairly well known, and the hotel is fairly well known, and we'll have enough business.
Honestly, if you ever come to Mogadishu, come and stay in the Sahafi Hotel, because the lobster's great and it's safe. Above all, it's safe.
Oh, we need more of that.
The other day, I looked at myself in the mirror. Do not hide your face. Do not hide your face from me when I feel sad. On the day when I call you, answer me, please answer me, and turn your shy ear to in the wilderness like an